Hey folks, I'm just back from Iceland. I've been testing out the new Nikon Z7 in a field tested review where I'm looking at all aspects of it. But one thing I wanted to do specifically was compare its lens adapting performance to the D850. Now it's hard to do that unless you're specifically shooting one lens on this camera, then one lens on that camera, one after the other, so you can really get a clear idea of how they're differently performing. Why I'm so interested in this, Nikon claims that with their glass you get the same performance as you do on an F-mount camera using the FTZ adapter onto the Z-mount adapter. And if that's the case, then it really opens things up for Nikon shooters like me who have a lot of money invested in F-mount glass to be able to buy the adapter and then get all the benefits of stabilization and peaking and all of that good stuff that the mirrorless cameras offer. So let's see how it actually does side by side. I'm going to be testing D lenses, G lenses, rare lenses, telephoto, ultra wide, Nikon, Sigma, Tamron, as well as teleconverters. Now I actually started testing this in Reykjavik a couple of days ago, so let's jump back there and look at the first few lenses. Okay folks, before we get started, if you want to protect your internet experience and safely browse wherever you are in the world, check out NordVPN. I've been a paying customer for over 18 months. Fantastic software. You can put it on all your mobile devices, computers, phones, tablets, and it gives you full peace of mind that your internet search and history is all kept private. Use the link below and use the code Granger at checkout and you can get 66% off their 2-year plan. Okay, so how I'm going to do this test is nice and simple. I've got a near focus object about 6 foot away, then about 20 foot away, then a couple of 100 feet away. I'm going to focus, 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 back, forward, back, and see how they perform. Now, I've been actually testing this gear out in detail for 2 weeks, but not in this one after the other on 2 different camera bodies. So I'm kind of comparing my impressions on the Z7 to my memory of the D850. So this will give us a much clearer idea. First lens I'm going to test is the 24-70 non-stabilized. This is one of my favorite and most used lenses. I think it's optically better than the newer generation, but I would love to have it stabilized, which is something the Z7 is going to give us. So let's see how this one performs on both of the cameras. Okay, so if you've used this combo, you would know how good it is. For all of these, I'm going to give it a score on the D850, then a score on the Z7, so you can see overall what my opinions are and compare the two. I would have to say that on the D850, it's a solid 8.5 out of 10. For me, that's a very good score, just so you know I'm kind of a tough marker. Okay. Not too bad, but there was an obvious a couple of times beep, beep, to get it that I would say was taking about 1/2 to 2/3 of a second to lock on, especially if I didn't have it on a great point of contrast, which is just how it is sometimes when you're in the field. On the Z7, I would only give it a 7, noticeably slower and more of a hunt. Nailed it absolutely every time on this, and that was my experience in the field as well. So now let's run through a bunch more lenses. Okay, the 70-200 VR2 on the D850. For both of these, I'm just choosing a central focus point. Do it at wide and long. Okay, on the D850, I'm going to give that a 9. I did find at the 200mm at the medium distance, it was actually slower than my memory. It's funny when you put things side by side like this, you notice things that you normally don't in the field. Let's check the Z7. Ooh, that's not good. Okay. Now that's disappointing. People, I hate to disappoint you, but I can only give that a 6. It was noticeably slower, especially in the long end, in the middle distance, like I found on the D850. But doing them one after the other, again, I'm realizing things that I just didn't notice before. When say you're shooting in the field and you're doing a wide angle on this camera and a long lens on this, you can't make an apples to apples comparison. But here I'm noticing the viewfinder lag. I really notice it after I've just used the DSLR, and a little bit of wobble as I'm moving quickly through the scene. So yeah, noticeably slower with the 70-200 VR2. The 14 to 24 is a decent performer. It's about the same as the 24 to 70, coming in at an 8.5 out of 10. On the Z7, it slowed down considerably and I found it a bit inconsistent and could only give it 6.5 out of 10. Whereas the 70 to 200 E variant was the best I've tested so far at 9.25 out of 10. Sadly, it slowed down a lot on the Z7. I could only give it an 8. Sigma 14 1.8 Art. The 14mm Sigma also did well on the D850, 8.5, and it slowed down even more on the Z7, down to a 5.5. The 35mm just as fast on the D850 and a lot better on the Z7. I'd give that a 7 out of 10. Okay, the 200 to 400 f4, beast of a lens. Doesn't focus that great, to be honest. I would only give it a 7 out of 10 on the D850. Let's see how it does on the Z7 if it does have the juice to power it. It should. It's using the same battery, right? What have I somehow... I don't know what I've done with that middle distance, but it seems to be right at the distance that they're all struggling with. This test is actually, I think, more challenging than I had expected. I could only give it a 5. It's usable for sure, but this kind of quick changing distances, they're no good. Once you're at about the same distance, it focuses fairly quickly, but we're in good, bright sunshine conditions. I would expect better than that. I think it's just not true to say that the F-mount glass focuses as well on the Z-mount adapter as it does on an F-mount camera like the D850. The Tamron 15 to 30, it's not quite as fast, but it's a good performer at 8 out of 10. And on the Z7, it fell back, but still acceptable at 6.5 out of 10. Tamron 90mm macro, these aren't speed demons. They're meant to be slow and methodical, but from a distance, this actually snaps in really nicely. I'm actually surprised myself, and I've shot with this a lot. I'm going to give it an 8.75. Well, this is surprising and frankly kind of disappointing. Really hunting and making noises that I've never heard on a DSLR, like roar from the motor. I am not comfortable to actually shoot this combo in case I'm going to do some damage to the lens. I've really never heard that noise before. So just based on speed, I would probably give it like a 5, but I'm actually going to give it like a 2 because I wouldn't recommend you use this combo. Maybe it'll be fixed in a future firmware update. FYI, we're just on firmware 1.0. That is the current one for the camera at this point in time. Okay, back to New York now. Not a bad start to the testing, but I've got about another 24 lenses here to test out, including lots of Tamron glass and some of my more primo lenses. Thanks again to B&H Photo for sending me out the Z7 and the adapter and a full kit of their new lenses to test out. If you're looking to pick up one of these units, please do check them out if you're in the States. I'll have links to them and Amazon and Lens Pro to go if you want to rent it before you consider buying it for yourself. Next up, let's try the 70 to 210 f4 to 5.6 push-pull D lens. That's actually a really solid performer. I've got to give it a good 8.5. That's as good as the modern 24 to 70. Let's try it on the Z7. Well, no focus whatsoever. It does let me control the aperture though, and I'm getting a lot of jelly rolling shutter with this lens. I'm not sure why that's affecting the viewfinder like that, but it really is. So that's a 0 for that guy. Next up, the Tamron 8518 SP. Also perfectly acceptable. There's no lag, it locks on almost instantaneously. Solid 8.25. Not great. I give it a 5.5. It was getting there fairly quickly, but then taking like a second or two to give you focus confirmation, and it did hunt a couple of times as well. That's disappointing because that's a great lens for the money. Next up, the 105 1.4. I really hope this one performs well on the Z7 because it's one of my favorite lenses. It's not the fastest to focus, but the image quality is fantastic, but it could really benefit from some stabilization. I'd give it a 7 3/4 on the D850. Perfectly fine for portraits and that kind of thing. Not as good as the others, like a 70-200 for sports or something. Z7. Come on, buddy, do this for me. Haha! This is probably working relative to its best performance on the other camera, the best so far. It's not as fast as the 70-200s, but this isn't as fast of a lens. I'd give it a 7.5. That's really close. I feel like they must have worked especially hard on this lens being a new and expensive one to make sure that it works great. So I'm very happy to see that. The 51.4G doing quite well at 7 3/4 out of 10. And not too bad on the Z7, 7 out of 10. The 1.8G I found slightly faster on both of them, 8 out of 10 on the D850 and 7.25 on the Z7. The Tamron 35mm, not bad, but not anything special, 7.5 on the D850. The 35 doesn't seem compatible at all. I can change the aperture, but it keeps spontaneously jumping between focus modes, and I'm not doing it. Going from a big point to a small point, brightening up and darkening down the screen, I think that's a 0. Let's try the 45. The 45mm was exactly the same, unfortunately, 7.5, and then it wouldn't work. The 85mm Nikon, one of my favorite lenses, 7 3/4. And really happy to see it's doing well with the Z7, still at 7.25. All right, let's try what might be the best value 70-200 on the market in my opinion, the Tamron G2 28. Love everything but these switches on it. This one focuses once or twice, but is giving me an error and telling me to reset to release the button again. I think it's not compatible yet. Hopefully that's a firmware fix because that's a great lens. What do you say we go for something a little bit bigger? Now, this is my favorite lens. So for me to consider the Z7, this has to work. On the D850, I should be leaving more headroom for even better performance in the future, but I got to give it a 9.75. It's not completely flawless, but it's the best probably that I've ever used. As good as, you know, the 400, 500 Super Teles that cost over $12,000. This is a stunner of a performance. Let's see how it is on the Z7. Okay, 1 or 2 times that I had a little misstep, but I'd have to give it still a 9 out of 10. It's faster than most lenses are on the top-end DSLRs via the adapter. So again, it seems really well optimized. Not as good as it is on the D850, but completely usable for any kind of use, including sports. The 150-600, little slower, 7.5 out of 10. With the Z7 though, unfortunately it's doing the same thing, jumping between focus modes. Hasn't given me an error, but it won't focus. Bummer. Now, it was my intention to try out the 2 different Tamron teleconverters, the 1.4 and the 2 times with the 70-200, but seeing it's not working, we have to skip those. I do, however, have some Nikon ones to check out. So I have the 1.7 version 2 and the 2 times version 3. Let's throw them on the 70-200 and see how they perform. Okay, this is the E variant with the 1.7 series 2. On the D850, I've shot with this a lot. It makes it into a 4.8. And this, in my opinion, is still eminently usable for all points. So give it half behind what it was with no adapter. Now let's try it on the Z7. Ooh, adapter city. to my surprise, I think that is the closest that's doing as well as it did on the D850. I actually give it the same mark. It's really hasn't slowed down putting it onto the Z7 with the adapter. I'm surprised. Let's try the 2 times. Woo-hoo. So windy, my shit's blowing away. Again, it's just as good. So look, it's pluses and minuses. I think off the bat, it's not fair to be saying that you get the exact same performance on the Z via the FTZ adapter that you would on something like a D850. Some of them, they really slowed down to what I expect to get from like a 3000 or 5000 series Nikon camera. But to my surprise, the 105, the 200 f2, the 70 to 200, all are still performing exceptionally well. The 24 to 70 and 14 to 24 acceptably well, just a little bit slower. But the biggest surprise for me is that adding in the teleconverter, which does slow down the DSLRs anyway, the FTZ adapter seemed to keep up with it on the Z7. And that was the one that I really thought would struggle the most out of all of the different combinations. So kind of the opposite result that I was expecting. In any case, this is firmware version 1.0. It's been on the market for a month, and I'm sure in time this is all going to get better and better as they improve the software. So I will publish an update to this. Let me know if there's other lenses you'd like to have included in that. I'll put links to everything that I've been testing down below. It's going to be a long list. Thanks again to B&H Photo for sending me out the loaner kit of the Z7 so early so that I could do this testing. And make sure you've liked and subscribed to stay up to date. My field tested review where I've taken this guy all around Iceland in all kinds of punishing conditions will be coming out very soon. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.